Today, we're going to explore the fascinating life story of Elizabeth I of England and learn how England flourished during her reign. Elizabeth was born on the 7th of September 1533 to Henry VIII and Queen Anne Boleyn, his second wife. Before we dive into her adventurous life, let's briefly touch upon her father, King Henry VIII, who has been described as a bloodthirsty person. Henry VIII's first marriage was to Catherine of Aragon, who was actually the widow of his brother. This marriage was against religious laws and was politically motivated rather than based on love. They had a daughter named Mary, who later became known as Mary the Bloodthirsty. Unfortunately, Catherine suffered from many miscarriages, and when Henry realized he needed a son as an heir to the throne, he decided to divorce her. This was a big deal because it wasn't allowed in the Catholic religion, and the Pope was opposed to it. However, Henry was able to get a divorce by receiving support from major religious universities in Europe. This led to a break from the Pope and the establishment of the Church of England, which would later benefit the United Kingdom by removing it from the sphere of influence of the Church of Rome. During this time, Henry VIII had a mistress named Anne Boleyn, who became pregnant. In order for their child to be considered legitimate, Henry quickly married Anne. However, to his disappointment, their child was born a daughter named Elizabeth. Anne became pregnant again, but unfortunately their son was stillborn. Henry was so angry about this that he accused Anne of having an affair, even though there was no evidence. Anne was executed by guillotine, and Elizabeth was declared illegitimate. Henry then married Jane Seymour, who gave birth to his son Edward, but sadly she died shortly after. Henry went on to marry 3 more women, divorcing his 4th wife after just 6 months. His 5th wife was also executed for cheating, but luckily his 6th wife survived. Henry VIII died in 1547. He left behind 3 children: Mary, who was 31 years old and a devout Catholic, Elizabeth, who was only 14 years old and a Protestant, and his only son, Edward, who was a minor and became known as Edward VI. Both Elizabeth and Edward were Protestants, and they joined forces against Mary. They passed laws in favor of the Protestant religion, including allowing priests to marry and abolishing the Catholic Mass. They also confiscated property from Catholic churches. In the next part of the story, Edward becomes ill, and the Duke of Northumberland, who was a Protestant and had been hard on Catholics for fear that Mary would take power, introduces Lady Jane Grey, Henry's 7th granddaughter, as Edward's successor to the throne. However, the people and nobility didn't accept this, and after only 9 days, Mary becomes the rightful Queen of England. Before her reign, Mary promised to be gentle with the Protestants, but after marrying the Spanish Crown Prince Philip, she went back on her word and oppressed them. She even called herself the Pope's guardian and killed around 300 people in the style of the Spanish Inquisition, earning her the nickname the Bloodthirsty. This was met with strong opposition from the British people who did not want to witness the Spanish Inquisition. After Mary's reign, she thought she was pregnant twice, but doctors told her it wasn't true, which made her frustrated and severely ill. When her husband Philip left England, her condition worsened. While everyone was gathered around Elizabeth, Mary died of cancer in 1558, and the throne went to her half-sister Elizabeth. People were overjoyed when Elizabeth ascended to the throne because they no longer had to fear foreign influence. As an Englishwoman on both her paternal and maternal sides, this was the first time since the Norman dynasty that an English monarch held the throne. The people celebrated Elizabeth's coronation with great enthusiasm. Elizabeth began her reign by setting up a council of advisors and quickly gained popularity among the people and courtiers by being frugal with her spending and traveling around the country. She followed her advisors' advice on many matters, but there was one issue she wouldn't budge on: marrying to have an heir. Despite being proposed to by European kings, princes, and English nobles, she never changed her mind. Elizabeth was always against violence and war and only fought when she was sure she could win. At the beginning of her reign, she treated Catholics with kindness for 10 years. However, there were 3 incidents that forced her advisors to take a harsher stance, including the St. Bartholomew Massacre in France, which was ordered by Catherine Medici, Queen of France. The second incident was the Pope's decree to excommunicate Elizabeth. And the final one was the establishment of Catholic schools outside the United Kingdom to try to retake it from the Protestants. As a result of these incidents, England decided to sever ties with the Pope again and confiscate Catholic property. Elizabeth also made it mandatory to read the Gospel in English. After these events, Elizabeth recognized the importance of maritime trade, which had been dominated by the world's 2 largest Catholic powers, Spain and Portugal. She supported Francis Drake and invested in his journey to lands previously conquered by Portugal and Spain. Drake even attacked the fortifications of these countries, which angered them and ultimately led to the Spanish-British War. During the Spanish-British War, King Philip II of Spain sent a large fleet to invade England, and Queen Elizabeth made Francis, who was previously just a merchant, a military commander. To maintain relations with Spain, the Queen denied any relationship with him. She also sent Admiral Drake with a fleet to confront the Spanish fleet. In a battle near the coast of England, the Spanish fleet suffered a heavy defeat due to severe storms and their guns having a shorter range, which made the British Navy superior on the seas. This defeat prevented the Spanish Empire from expanding its colonies as before. As a result of this victory, England replaced Spain in expanding marine exploration and colonies. Various commercial companies such as the East India Company were formed, and Elizabeth began the legendary British Empire where the sun never set. Before the war with Spain, there was a lot of debate surrounding Elizabeth's succession. Since Mary Stuart, who was the descendant of Henry VII and Queen of Scotland, was the only eligible person, concerns were growing. If anything happened to Queen Elizabeth, Mary would become Queen of England, which was a nightmare for the Protestants of England because Mary was a Catholic. Mary Stuart succeeded to the throne of Scotland at the young age of 6. She went on to marry the Crown Prince of France, but with his death just a year after ascending the throne, she was forced to return to Scotland to reign in the country. Upon her return, she realized that Scotland had taken on a strong anti-Catholic atmosphere, and her people looked at her with disbelief. She tried to win over the hearts of the people and nobility, and at first, she was successful. However, her love affairs eventually caused her to lose her throne. After arriving in Scotland, Mary married her cousin, Lord Barnley, and they had a son named James VI of Scotland. However, Mary later entered into a relationship with Lord Bothwell, who was deeply disliked by the people. Together, Mary and Lord Bothwell murdered her husband, Lord Barnley, and they married just 3 months later. This marriage outraged the Pope, European kings, and most importantly, the people and nobility of Scotland. As a result, Mary was arrested, and her son James came to the throne. James eventually fled to England, seeking refuge from Queen Elizabeth. Despite Parliament's request to execute him, Elizabeth gave him shelter. However, James plotted against the Queen while in prison. British aristocrats and courtiers who wanted to execute Mary falsely accused her of plotting to murder Queen Elizabeth. She was found guilty and sentenced to death after 20 years in prison. In the later years of her reign, Queen Elizabeth faced some challenges, but she also made a momentous decision that united England and Scotland. After Mary, Queen of Scots, was executed, Elizabeth chose James VI of Scotland as her successor, and he became the first British king, bringing the two kingdoms together. During this time, Queen Elizabeth had to deal with the rebellion of Lord Essex, someone who held a special place in her heart. It was a difficult period, and unfortunately, she had to issue a death sentence for him. This was a source of great sadness for her in her final years. On a peaceful day, March 24, 1603, Queen Elizabeth passed away at the age of 69. Her reign is fondly remembered as the Golden Age of England, a time of prosperity and cultural flourishing. People from all walks of life enjoyed the arts and literature. Even humble villagers could recite poetry and play musical instruments like the violin. The era was blessed with the brilliance of great writers like William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe, who left a lasting impact on English literature. The period also saw the contributions of remarkable philosophers, including Francis Bacon, who enriched the intellectual landscape of the time. Overall, Queen Elizabeth's reign was a remarkable chapter in history, filled with both challenges and achievements, and it left a lasting legacy that is still celebrated today. If you like this video, please like the video and subscribe our channel and comment your opinion about Elizabeth I. Until next time.